Then came the Vietnam War and our old friend, Dick Nixon. On August 15, 1971, Nixon announced that the mighty U.S. dollar could no longer be converted into gold. One would think that the whole global economy would have collapsed overnight when people realized that their local currency was no longer backed by anything other than a government's word that it had value. It didn't, at least not overnight. There was global price instability and inflation through the rest of the decade, and gold appreciated more than 2,500% in less than 10 years. Even so, the global system didn't collapse, but it did slowly and unmistakably begin to change. Since none of the world's currencies have been backed by gold over the last 40 years, they have all depreciated in value significantly. The last 4 decades have, by all accounts, been the most intensely inflationary period in recorded history. Even the dollar, which has fared better than most, has lost over 80% of its value since 1971. The catch, however, is that governments have been able to artificially create economic growth such that it has, for the most part, kept up with inflationary pressures. In other words, when economies falter, governments are free to print money to prop them back up. At first glance, one might say, so where's the problem? If economic growth is strong enough that people earn more money as prices go up, what's wrong with that? We've fixed the short-term price instability that the gold standard brought, and balance is now reached through government intervention in the currency markets. Though it's an oversimplification, that's exactly what happened. At least, that's what happened until very recently. In 2008, it all changed. The problem with the new system of inflation and artificial growth is that it discourages saving and encourages borrowing. Think about it. If you know your dollars are going to be worth less tomorrow than they are today, why save them? Buy what you want because you know you'll be able to buy less tomorrow with the same dollars. Better yet, why not borrow money now to buy even more? If your dollars are going down in value, your wages increasing, and prices are on the rise, it makes sense to borrow money today. When you borrow, you'll buy goods at today's low price. When the price increases, the dollars you borrowed will be worth less, and it will take you less work to pay them back, right? Doesn't that sound like what happened with the mortgage industry here in the U.S.? The only problem with this system is that it makes it nearly impossible to save money. Now, instead, you have to invest and earn returns to keep up with the falling value of money. Remember our parents' parents. Was wise investing a virtue for them? Maybe, but it was probably not nearly as important as saving money. That's changed today, hasn't it? Nowadays, it's widely expected that your savings account is not the majority of your net worth. We all buy stocks, real estate, and other assets that produce returns. We have to do this, or inflation will slowly erode the value of our savings. Say goodbye to cash under the mattress and hello to 401ks, investment banks, and big money on Wall Street. Throughout the 80s and 90s and most of the last decade, this system brought unprecedented prosperity to most of the world. The problem, of course, is that it's nothing more than a pyramid scheme. For 40 years, money has been virtually free both here and abroad. This has encouraged borrowing on all levels. Citizens have borrowed from companies to buy goods. Companies have borrowed from banks to loan money. Banks have borrowed from citizens and governments to finance the whole mess, and governments have borrowed from anywhere they possibly can. The whole thing works because of the world's confidence in the U.S. economy and our government's ability to make good on our debts and prop up the world's reserve currency. In a sense, we have borrowed from other countries, allowing them to create cheap money and continue the borrowing bonanza. That's all fine and dandy until someone stops believing in the system, or rather, stops believing in the dollar. Pyramid schemes tend to run well while there's an ever-increasing amount of money coming in. New money flowing in pays the bills to the old lenders, and everything moves along quite nicely. That is, until the money stops flowing in. Then it all falls apart. Let's go back to our deal concerning the cows from your farm. I want to buy them, but instead of giving you gold, I'm going to give you an IOU. The note would state that instead of giving you 1 ounce of gold for each cow, I would give you 3 ounces. The catch is that I need to take your cow in advance and go sell it to another guy for 4 ounces of gold so I can give you the 3 I owe you. Then you ask, how are you going to find someone to buy this silly old cow for 4 ounces of gold? I reply, it's simple. I'm going to tell him to loan me one of his cows, which I will then offer to someone else for 5 ounces of gold, using the same method to get the third farmer to agree. If you had any sense, you'd tell me to take my gimmicks elsewhere. As soon as one farmer doesn't agree to the deal, the whole plan falls apart. In a sense, that's exactly what happened when the real estate bubble burst in the U.S. 3 years ago. The whole world relies on the dollar as the storage place for wealth. The system worked because the U.S. economy has been so large and so strong that it represented stability in and of itself. The U.S. economy, in a sense, fulfilled the role that gold has played for thousands of years. People could buy dollars and save them, knowing that they would never be worthless because the U.S. economy was so strong. The problem was that the U.S. economy has become an economy of debt. With interest rates low, money available, and the government propping up economic growth, consumerism in the U.S. grew at a staggering pace. Soon, everyone bought a home. Home values went up indefinitely, loans were easy to get, and real estate became the great American investment. The problem was, one day, one farmer decided not to buy the cow, and the entire system collapsed. Investors stopped buying mortgage-backed securities, the money stopped flowing, and the pyramid came down. As the world's economy started to unravel in 2008, the U.S. government did what other governments have been doing for decades. They borrowed, and borrowed some more. The government's solution was to borrow like crazy and stimulate the economy, relying on future growth to pay the bills. This has been made possible by the fact that the dollar is still the world's reserve currency. Though investors are losing confidence in the dollar at an alarming rate, they simply don't have much in the way of other options, at least not yet. The truth is that markets correct themselves, no matter how much governments try to intervene. The folks in Washington have been able to slow the deterioration, raise the debt ceiling, bail out the banks, save some homeowners, fight 2 wars, and get themselves reelected again and again and again. What they can't do, however, is save the dollar. By pursuing these policies, they're destroying the one mechanism that makes the whole system work, the world's confidence in the U.S. dollar. We are already starting to see the cracks appearing. Just look at the price of gold. Remember that gold was at $35 per ounce when Nixon took us off the gold standard. On August 15, 2011, the 40-year anniversary of that day in 1971, gold was at $1,770 per ounce. That means that gold has appreciated in value by more than 5,000% in just 4 decades. Actually, that's not really true. It's not as though there is less gold today than there was in 1971. It's just that it takes much more work, much more money, and many more cows to buy that same ounce of gold. Gold hasn't actually increased. Everything else has gone down. 4 decades is not much time. That's not even a full generation. When you plan for your future, is it possible you need to think another 40 years down the road? If not, won't the economic landscape of the world matter to your children in 2052? The point is that if this current trend continues, the Great Pyramid Scheme will keep on robbing the end user. The end user, of course, is you. The only course of action left for private citizens is to take the situation by the horns and stop buying the cows. By holding U.S. dollars through this mess, we're effectively saying, sure, we believe this bill will hold its value, even though we've seen it do nothing but go down for the last 40 years. In a sense, we have to get back to the basics. We live in a world where the idea of investing must be replaced with the idea of saving. We live in a world where saving can't really be done by holding currency. Thankfully, we live in a world where we have the freedom to make our own choices, at least for now. It's no wonder more and more investors are flocking to gold. It's really the only way out of this great pyramid scheme. Some folks say gold's in a bubble, but bubbles are the result of an artificially inflated sense of value. Over the long haul, gold is value, and thus doesn't artificially inflate. Even for those who bought gold in January of 1980, when it was at its previous all-time high, this simple fact holds true. Today, they have more than doubled their money, while the dollar has done nothing but fall apart. Like it or not, this is the new reality. Like it or not, gold may be the only option. The global economy can't go on booming forever on borrowed money, and the other shoe will drop. All we can do as individuals is protect ourselves and make sure none of us is the last farmer to buy the cow.